Hello, welcome to the October 31st, 2025 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can just simply type your questions in the live chat field, or when asking, or send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, it's always helpful if you could specify a couple of things when asking questions with your setup. So if you could indicate which level of Cubase you're running. So if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg versions, which version number, such as 12, 13, or 14, as well as which operating system. That information is often helpful. Let me clear my throat. And realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed with the number of questions that come in. But we will go through all of the questions chronologically as asked in order. So if you don't see your question being addressed immediately, we will, I may be behind, sometimes 20 to 30 minutes behind. But with that, we will get through all the different questions in order. We should have an index of all the topics that are covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field, so you can navigate and search for the topics that were discussed today. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to clubcubase@steinberg.de, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that wonderful site. So you could just kind of do a search, and that would take you directly to all the timestamp indexes which he's collected. We have two people that serve as moderators. So we have Agent K and Jazz Dude. So they're not Steinberg employees. They really just kind of do this to make it a better community experience, and we appreciate the efforts that they put into it. We'll also give an extra round of expression of our gratitude to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information that's available to the Steinberg community. And so once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. in the United States, in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, make sure that you feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. Today is the last live stream of the month. Generally, what that means is we go for about 2 hours, and we'll do our Zoom social meetup. I'm going to paste the link. We had some people mention that it would be good to see the link, so I'm just going to post the Zoom meetup link. So if you wanted to join, just in case the chat doesn't get refreshed immediately, you can see the meeting ID here and the password, and this will be live starting in about 2 hours. So this will be just a live meeting. This meeting won't be recorded, but just for people to come on the live stream so that people can meet each other. So this is the meeting ID. So if you just go to Zoom, and we'll be starting in about 2 hours. So you can see the meeting ID and password, and I pasted the link in as well into the chat. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Stefan joining from Sweden. We have Jan is Cubase Index. It says, and Jan is like, this time I'm not late. I remember it's still daylight saving time in the US. Yeah, so our clocks are changing. We're ending daylight saving time on Sunday in the United States. So we may be kind of in sync with European countries, but just a heads up for other people for an hour off. All right, and Jan is wishing everyone a happy Halloween. That's good. Great to see Dr. McFarland Studios just saying howdy. We have Mark Winslow saying aloha from Honolulu. All right, always wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. We have Martin joining from Germany. Braxel just says, hello Greg, I've been so busy. Can you tell me exactly the measured delay works for outboard gear in Cubase Pro 14? So if we have outboard gear, by the time we incorporate outboard gear into our DAW, by the time it goes out of the software with other plugins, it goes out into the real world. It goes out of our audio interface through our converters to the inputs of the outboard gear, gets processed in the outboard gear, and then sent back. That could often result in a little bit of delays. So once we have, if we come over here to our studio menu and we go to our audio connections, we have what we call external effects. So if we have our external effects here, we could just say, okay, we're going to pick and choose exactly where this is going to be, where this outboard gear will be connected to our converters. Once we have that defined, once we go and open up a track with the outboard gear, so we would just come over here, let's say we want to do our inserts, we would see our external plugins, and at this point we would just see, so let's say we wanted to go to, our lexicon here, and then once we do that, we'll see that a little, because there's generally no user interface that will pop up for particular plugins, but what we could do is just come over here and we could measure the delay. So once we click on this will kind of ping the system and measure that latency of that outbound path that gets returned back into Cubase, and that will measure the delay, and that will automatically do the delay compensation so that tracks that are going to the outside world and back into the software mixer can be utilized without any timing issues. So once you instantiate the particular plugin as an external effect, you'll open up as soon as you instantiate the editor. At that point, you'll see measured delay, and then the outboard gear, the delay compensation is automatically accommodated for. All right. We see Tony Trenzo joining from a very early morning in Australia. Thanks for being here. Great to see Vince from Winnipeg. It's Fly V. All right, so we see a question how to see input meters in the header without turning on monitoring. So I think you would need to enable monitoring if you wanted to see like the input meters here. So this is kind of showing your inputted, so if we're sending a particular signal, let's say I'll send this track to a group. All right, and let's say I want to take this track as an input. We'll take this vocal group as an input into this particular channel. So as soon as we come over here, we can just, so let's say we want this coming from our groups here. Let me just see. Just add, make sure this is going out. Okay, so now, if we don't have the input monitoring, because a lot of times you may not want to, so we're going to come over here. So we have this particular track. So as we play this little part, I'll just put it into So as soon as we're here and so if you wanted to see the metering here, this is going to, you need to engage the meter there. So, otherwise, so as it's playing back, we could see the meters, but you would need to, engage the meter to see the input meter on the track level. We can right click on the tracks themselves. And if we have audio going, so if we go to our metering, so we go to our channel meter settings, we could say, okay, I want this to be on input, and we'll see if that makes a difference. I think that's just going to be for the mixer. I feel the way. Yeah, so you'll need to, if you want to see the metering here, it would need to be, the monitoring would need to be engaged. In light we lay. All right. Thanks for your question. All right, we see John Costigan checking in from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Sorry, wait. All right, so we see Nick White says, where have the index links to show the question asked? So after the live stream is over, you will see that so you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan is very diligent about kind of copying those over. But let's say if I wanted to, we'll just go to a new window here. We'll look at our last live stream. So generally they're going to be pinned to the top of the comments field. So say if we come over here to the live, we'll go to our live stream from Tuesday. So as soon as we open this up and we look at the comments, so generally always pinned to the top, you can see all the questions with timestamps, so you can immediately jump there. If you wanted to go to cubaseindex.com, this is where you could just say, okay, here's our huge Q&A, and at this point you can say, okay, we want to look in 2025, and at this point we could just say, like, just do Command or Control F, and then you can say, okay, I'm looking for metering. And then you could just navigate and search through all the different topics on cubaseindex.com. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, Robert Garrett asks, hello, Greg, will we see Cubase 15 next month? So as soon as it is released, is generally Steinberg will do the announcement. So I can't talk about any release until it's actually been announced. So all right, we have a question from Cycling is Awesome. It says, hi, Greg. Since 2 days, I have no access to certain presets in Diva by Yuhi. Other Cubase instruments function properly. Thank you. So generally, I'm not sure if there's anything that's Cubase related that would affect your presets. Because I believe Diva, I don't have a license for it, is probably not using the VST3 plugin presets. So if it's not utilizing the VST3 plugin presets, all the plugin presets are kind of handled directly by the plugin by itself. So I'm not sure if it's anything that's going to be Cubase related with that, because they probably have their own preset management system built in. All right, so Tony Trunzo asks, Greg, when I want to add a hit point, I get a pop-up saying, please zoom resolution lower than 1. How can I add a hit point, please? All right, so let's say if I'm here, and we go to my hit points. So I'm going to edit the hit points. And let me just go ahead and, all right, so let's just see if we zoom in here. All right, so I'm kind of getting the same message. All right, let me just try it on like a drum loop here. Okay. Let me see if there's modifier keys that. Okay, so we see that we have added a hit point there, so we may just have to kind of zoom in. And let's say we go to the edit hit points. I'm holding down my Alt or Option key, and then I could add my hit points accordingly. So there's our hit points that we added. So just kind of zoom in, and let's see at what level. So grab my pencil tool. All right, so you might have to just simply kind of zoom in more. And then with the Alt or Option key, let's say we have the edit hit points, then you could just kind of drop in hit points like so. So give that a try, Tony. Martin asks, Greg, are you also familiar with VST Rack? So I played around with it a bit. I don't have any, I'm in the kind of Yamaha digital console group, but I don't have any digital consoles that VST Rack works with. So I kind of played around with it with the DM3 at a trade show, but it basically allows you over a Dante network, you could run VST effects, like if you wanted to run frequency, or other plugins such as like the analysis plugin, supervision effects. You could run those particular plugins and have access to those plugins within, like, over the Dante network, so that you could have like the same plugins that you use in your DAW show up and be functional in your live console. So it's kind of like if you're doing mixing a live concert and you wanted to have your plugins from Cubase or Nuendo in. All right, great to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. And he's happy that it's a Friday Zoom. All right, and the first gallon of ice cream goes to Jan with chocolate banana ice cream, 1 gallon. And Michael Teams is granted Dr. McFarland Studios 1 gallon of chocolate eclair ice cream. All right. And Jazz Dudes received 1 gallon of gooey butter ice cream. Sounds good. And chocolate cherry mash for Martin. Braxall's received 1 gallon of Celebration Station. Sounds like a good song name. All right, so we see Tim Weinheimer just says, hello, Greg, mum's the word. All right. All right, Dr. McFarland Studio says, in my opinion, input metering should be on by default when a track is armed, and you only turn on monitoring when you want to hear yourself and not already monitoring through the interface. You know, one of the things that you could do also is, you know, there's different, so I'm not sure, depending on your monitoring. So if you go to the preferences under VST, and we choose auto monitoring. So, you know, by default, it's set to manual. So as soon as I, come over here and I select a track, the monitoring is not enabled by default. I generally prefer to set the VST, so this is the default state. I set it to tape machine style. And that way when I have a track, like an audio track selected here, when it's selected, that monitoring is automatically engaged. So let me know if you have like the auto monitoring set to tape machine style. All right, Don Pryor says, when putting chord track in with letter names, how do you make the letter names bigger? All right, so let's say we have chord track here. So one is if we just change the height of the track. So if I have that track, larger vertically, we could get our names larger like so. So if we have just kind of half a line or multiple lines, we could just, as we adjust the vertical height of the chord track, we could see that font increase. If we zoom in vertically or horizontally rather, I think it's still, we may also see that, so if you're like tracking across the room or someone was actually, recording, you could just simply kind of come over here and use that as like a, as a quick, their chord charts for the project. So try increasing the vertical height of the chord track, and you can see that the chords will become larger as well. All right, we see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. Michael Teams has granted Tim Moinheimer 1 gallon of raspberry swirl ice cream. We have Jahian L. Price just sending greetings from Granada Hills, California. Sue asks, somewhat a different topic, but does there exist a similar group for Dorico as well? So yeah, if you go to youtube.com/Dorico, my colleague John Barron. So we'll just come over here. He does Discover Dorico sessions, and they also kind of do some more live interactive. So if you just go to youtube.com/Dorico, just to make sure, so when you come over here, and if you go to the live stream, so they have it in German as well, but they have like Fall for Dorico Masterclass, so kind of similar concepts on a Dorico site as well. So, and John Barron does a great job, super smart guy, and knows Dorico very well. Proud to have him as a colleague. Sorry about that. All right. All right, so yeah, John Barry again joining from the English Riviera. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. All right, Dengol asks, please explain how to most effectively and efficiently use the extract groove function on a drum loop so that one can program MIDI drums with the same feel. Okay, so let's say I want to come over here. Let's say we have, I'll just do something brand new. Okay, so I want to program a drum track here. Okay, so let's go ahead and and say I'll just do kind of a generic, super generic pattern here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's say I'll just program a super generic drum loop. Okay. All right, now let's take a, I'll repeat this a couple times here. And we will join these together. All right, so what we want to do now, let's find a, so we have this is very kind of straight. And I want to take like maybe more of like a drum loop, and we'll just find something that's a little more with a feel. So let's say okay, so let's say we have like this MIDI here. So what I want to do is I'm going to, let's go ahead, I'll duplicate this drum part. So I want the feel of this drum loop for my MIDI. So what I want to do is I could open up my automation panel. I'm going to drag the drum loop in. And now when I come over here, it's created a quantize preset, and I'm going to take my MIDI and hit Q. We're going to apply the quantize preset from the drum loop. So now we play both of them together. So once you have like an audio loop, drag it into the quantize panel. That will save it as a preset, gets added to the bottom. And then at that point, we just apply that preset to our normal drums. So if we come over here and we just choose to quantize based on that particular groove, then that would be in the same time. So let me know if that's helpful. Okay. All right, Wilson, Glenn, Machado. Hi, VST instruments are not seen. Are there any stock VST instruments available in Cubase 14? So yeah, you get a wide variety of instruments. Make sure that when you go to, because when you install Cubase from the download assistant, so let's come over here to the download assistant for Cubase. So, depending on if you install just Cubase, the installation is kind of broken up. It used to be as always kind of tied in together as one large file, and then people would have, if they had bad internet access. So let's say we go to My Products. I want to come over here to Cubase 14. So as soon as you do this, you'll see Howling Sonic selection content, Groove Agent. We will see Pad Shop, Retrolog, Iconica Sketch, Verve. So those are all instruments, and also within the Howling Sonic selection, you're going to get Trip and another instrument that will show up inside of Howling Sonic. So make sure that when you come here to the Steinberg download assistant that you just haven't installed Cubase, but you've installed all of like all of these from and you get the drum machine content, the Howling Sonic Groove Agent, Retrolog, Pad Shop, Iconica Sketch, Verve. So all of those are included with Cubase. And within the Howling Sonic selection, there's a number of instruments that work inside of Howling Sonic as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different instruments. All right. All right, so we see from Channel Ripoff says thank God it's Friday. Says hi G, after I make 4 chords in a dotted note rhythm, then how can I make them all connected per chord, gluing like them together? All right, so let's take a quick look. All right, so let's say we have this type of deal. Let me glue these. Okay, so let's say we have something like this. So let's just come over, and I think if we go to MIDI, we'll go to Functions, and then just choose Legato. That then all of the notes will be extended over. So try going to MIDI, Functions, Legato, and that should extend the instruments over as well. All right, so you see from Dr. McFarland Studios says, I always monitor through my interface, but like to see my input meters in the track header. So, you can, just as we discussed earlier, if, let's say at that point, and you have to also figure out that, okay, if you have your input meters, one is you can see the input meters on the mix console. So if you have the lower zone mix console open, you could do that. But I think, it also gets to be like, let's say if you're doing a punch in, how do you want the meters to be indicated for existing material or for only recorded material, and that's why the input metering is going to be kind of tied directly to, you know, the monitor enabled status, because if you already have existing parts, do you want to see the metering of the existing part, or do you want to see metering of only the input signal here? And you know, you also have input meters on the mixer here as well, so you could see all of your available inputs here. And let's say if I just come over, let's see if we just automate these just for a second. So let's say I'll select these, and let me just say if we automate these, let's see if they show up under. So if you wanted to see just the input meters, like I think as long as you have some activity, so even if you just like, you know, you could go to the input channels. I know many DAWs may not have separate input channels, but if we wanted to do just, you know, have some data there, like just, you know, a touch of quick automation, then you could see the metering here on your input. If you didn't want to use the monitor for the input meter, you could also just see any input meters directly here in the mix console or on the project window as well, I believe. All right, we have Z30, or Zethro, maybe just saying hello to everyone. Great to see Rob Schmedicke. Just says thanks for your channel wisdom. So thanks for showing up, and hope you're doing well in Tarpon Springs, Florida. I had a friend that moved there recently. Seems to be enjoying it, posting pictures from his condo of great sunsets. All right. All right, let's see, Wonder Arp says, question, how do you save modulator connections in a template? Say modulating a delay time with LFO, seems connection is gone when opening the template next time. Is it possible? Let's take a look. So let's say we add an audio track. On this audio track, let's say we will have delay, and I want, let's say we'll get to our modulators. I will add modulator. Okay, so we see our delay time here. All right, let's check. So we will come over here, let's save as a template. Okay, so we'll close this, or I'll just do a new project. Let's come over to Modulator October 31st. So it looks like it's still maintained in the template. So here's our new template, and the modulators are still working kind of as expected. Okay, Tony Tronzo says, Greg, why did I get a voucher for spectral layers when I already own spectral layers? And could I use that voucher for something else? Or can I transfer the voucher, example, give it to another Cubase user? Thanks. So I think sometimes, you know, if you bought like a Nuendo, you know, during the promotion, that there was a voucher for a discount on there's a voucher for a discount on spectral layers is just kind of extra enticement. So sometimes, like the different product categories will, have complementary products, not complementary as in free, but as in working together. And I don't think that there's a way to transfer the voucher to someone else because it's kind of tied to your account, or to kind of transfer it to a different product. So sometimes, you may just see vouchers for different products as part of a promotion, and I think that's probably what you received. So you see from Henka, says, "Hello Greg, I have difficult times with Melodyne. I used it as an extension and flattened it. Now have audio playing without actual events in the track. Happens almost every time." All right, so I don't have a Melodyne license here, but let me just I'll do something, let's say in spectral layers real quick just to show. So let me just go to this project here. And I'll take these two and I'll just quickly bounce to selection. All right, and I'm going to come okay, so I'm going to take this particular event. Let's come over here to I'll do something in WaveLab here, but it's an ARA extension. So I will come over here. Let's just do let's do something that's visually obvious here. Okay, so I'll reverse this in WaveLab. Okay, so now let's see, we play back. So when I come over here, I'll just say, okay, when we go to our extension, we could, let's see if I just do it, I usually do it on a track level, but let's say if we come over here to our extensions and we'll say make extensions permanent. That now we're back to our sample editor, and if we just solo this track that we reversed in WaveLab through an ARA extension, that's automatically showing up. So I haven't run into problems with it kind of reflecting back, but let me know if you flattened it or you made the extension permanent. So if you're doing it on the particular event, when you go to your audio menu here, so as opposed to kind of, usually you see flattening, like when you're in the sample editor and you go to process, that you could choose to flatten, but maybe if you go to like the extensions area, or if we select the audio, go to extensions, and you choose to make the extension permanent, see if that helps and resolves the issue for you. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom social meetup here. Hang on a second. I'm going to paste that one more time. be starting that in about an hour and 13 minutes. All right. All right, we see from Dangle says, is there any way to neatly organize those groove quantize presets? So no, I've kind of brought this up and hoping maybe in the future we would see, when we come over here, you could see kind of a big list of your quantize, of your Groove Agent quantize presets. So as soon as it's kind of dragged over, we could just come over there, but it's not where we could choose, so we could save presets, but it's just going to kind of show up in a big list. And it can be a bit unwieldy at times when you have lots of them. All right, wonderful to see Steve Leeds checking in from Berkeley, California. And the one instrument that also comes with Hallian Sonic that I forgot to mention was Flux, which is a great instrument to play around with. All right, we see Fly-V just saying that he got a new instrument with a bunch of great effects called Current, made by Minimal Audio. I'll check it out. Thanks for sharing. So Dr. McFarland Studio says, guess the Zoom starts at 2 p.m. Central. Yeah, so usually we go for about 2 hours and then we kind of start. All right, Fly-V asks, does UR22C just use less computer function than my UR22 Mark II with it having built-in effects? So it has built-in effects, and those effects you can use to monitor through the effects or print. So you can monitor the reverb without any perceptible latency. There's also going to be the ability to record with like the guitar amp or like the morphing channel strip, so that you could actually record with compression on the way in. So it doesn't necessarily save CPU, but for like real-time monitoring, if you're recording vocals, the built-in DSP can help with that, so you don't have to set up kind of different plugins which could impose latency on the monitoring path. So that's kind of the design intention. Also, it's going to, instead of having a USB-B connector type on the back, it's a USB-C connector, and utilizing USB 3, like super speed technology or whatever it's called. Okay, so we see channel ripoff. Just says, yes, legato will work with multiple notes in the chord. You just showed an example of only one note per chord. Talk about like 6 dotted notes per chord, all into one. Okay, let me just jump back, see if we still have that. All right, so let me come over here. Let's activate this. So I guess it's like maybe with different pitches. So if it's like here, we have 4 chords, different pitches. Let's try the legato, see what it does. So that way, if you have different chords for each one, but will work with multiple notes in a chord. You just showed an example with only one note per chord. Talk about like 6 notes. So I mean, it seems like, let me know if that's kind of what you were expecting. All right, Uno Memento wants people to whack the like button. All right, Gaston Torres says, there's a promo for Nuendo. I'm not a video games producer, just with music. But as it had additional features, do you think that could be better software than Cubase, or music production makes no sense? I think that pretty much for your music production, a Cubase would cover all those different things. So Nuendo is going to have like post-production, game audio production, reconforming, Wise support, game audio connections. But I think probably for music production, Cubase would cover all those needs. I think it's Jazz, you mentioned that the Nuendo promo was already expired. All right, Law of Prawn Meta Score says, hi Greg, when you use Alt up down arrow in the score editor to transpose a note up or down, it also moves it to the left. Is it because of quantize settings? Can't figure it out. All right, so let's take a look. I'll just select this particular note. So it seems to be moving just the selected note. So I'm just holding down the alter option plus the down arrow or up arrow. So it doesn't seem to be moving. I could put some, if we so let's say if I take this note here and it's the drum part, but seems to be kind of just moving the note without affecting the rhythmic value of it. All right, Steve Leeds asks, let's say I wanted to use a Drum Genius loop from my Android phone as my drum track in a Cubase project. How would I go about importing, setting it up, and getting correct levels? Thanks. So I'm not so familiar with the Drum Genius, but as long as you could get the WAV file from your phone directly over to your computer, some Android phones, you can just simply connect a USB cable and it will show up as kind of like a flash drive, like an external drive, and you could drag and drop. You could often upload it to, if you're on an Android device, you probably have a Google account, I assume, and with that Google account, you probably have a Google Drive, so you could upload it to your Google Drive and then download that standard WAV file directly into Cubase. All right, so we're seeing Dr. McFarland Studios. It says Harrison Mix bus works differently with the metering. Yeah, so I mean, play around with, let me know if you're on the tape machine style for your monitoring, because I think that may kind of give you the same kind of exact functionality. Is like when the track is armed, you'll see the input metering. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher on from Oxford. All right, we have Dwight Cunningham checking in from the Bahamas. And he asked, Greg, can you explain the difference between Step Designer and Beat Designer in regards to drums versus instruments? So Step Designer, let me just open it up here. so let's come over here. All right, let's grab our MIDI inserts. So, step designer is also going to be just kind of monophonic. So like as we would, play back like our different steps. So let's say if I come over here, so I can't necessarily, do like, kick and snare at the same time. But I can't necessarily, so it's kind of more for kind of monophonic capabilities, whereas drums, obviously you want like maybe kick, snare, hi-hat, and a cymbal crash all on the same time. So if we were to kind of do something with Groove Agent, the step designer is going to be kind of monophonic, so that may not be as applicable for drums, whereas the beat designer obviously is going to be more traditional kind of grid programming for your drums. Okay. All right. Mark Brugler says, howdy, happy I finally have time to watch the live streams. Been using Cubase since the studio case. That was a great package. I'm still learning. I'm trying to make lead sheets for a band with just the chords and bass line. Okay, so let's say if we have a project here,
you called me to.
All right, so as soon as I come here, so let's say, okay, I have my chord track. So let's say I don't really have like my chords figured out here. What I could do is just kind of drag that to I could drag an audio or MIDI event to the chord track, and then I can just say, okay, I want to add an instrument or a MIDI track. Doesn't really matter. At this point, we want to make kind of an empty score. So let's say I'll take this guitar part, we'll set our left and right locators around that, and I can just come over here. Let's go to the score editor for this, and now I could see that we could have our chords. Let me just adjust one thing here on my tempo track. And we won't show that in our chords, but now when we go in our score editor, so now we could have kind of our chord charts kind of automatically laid out for us right here. And if you wanted to see like the bass line, so let's say here I have an audio bass line.
Time ago.
I could come over here to VariAudio. And within VariAudio, we'll say, choose a function, we'll extract MIDI. And now when I open this in the score editor, and I'll just label this a bass part here. I'll just change the name here. I'm sorry. And now we can see kind of, even from audio, just and that way you could have the lead sheets and a bass part even if the bass was recorded as audio.
His soured words are now dead.
So give that a try. Mark, thanks for joining us, being part of the community today. All right, Mark Brugler just says, I isolated the bass with spectral layers, but I don't know how to import that isolated file back into the score editor. Can you show me how to make a lead sheet from the chords and bass line? All right, so I think I have a file that's already unmixed in spectral layers. Let me see if it's in my recent, yeah. All right, so listen to this. So I come over here and we can see our bass part. So I'm just going to drag the bass part like to the beginning of the track. So when I come over here, let's say, okay, I'll just and now we see in the layers here, once you've kind of extracted it, drag it out. Here, I'll just revert this real quick. Show you from square one so you don't get confused. Okay, so once we see our layers are broken down here. I'm going to drag the bass over. Okay, now that we have the bass there, now when we go into VariAudio, so I'll double click here. And first thing I want to do is I'm going to just do a quick bounce selection. So to create a new audio file that's not kind of within that. So we double click VariAudio, it's going to do its analysis and then convert this. And I haven't done any tempo. Let me do a quick tempo detection on the file. So that, because right now there's no correlation. So if I put on my metronome, so I'll go to my project menu, do tempo track, and let's do our tempo detection. All right, and I will come over here. Let's put our meter into 4/4. All right, so once we have that done, now come over, and if I want to figure out the chords, I could, let's add a chord track. I could drag that file over to our chords. Come over here, let's double click. We will now, again, under the functions, extract the MIDI. And now we look at that in the score editor, and I will just rename it here real quick. And now you could kind of see our bass part, and with the chords automatically generated. So again, let me just hide our tempo. So I'm going to select the tempo so we don't see the tempo on every. So now here's our MIDI part. And then, we could adjust, let's say if we get to our instrument settings, we could adjust so let's say we'll just make it for fretted instruments. We'll say 4-string bass. And then you could just have your parts printed out just like that. So when you have spectral layers, you can double click on the audio part itself. So, and then drag the layer to the project window, then do VariAudio, and at that point, you could make your lead sheet with that. All right, great to see Roland stuff on from checking in from Sussex, England. I'm going to go ahead and paste the Zoom meetup information, again, the link. And if for those that want to write it down real quick, and this will just be a live meeting. So if you're watching this in replay, it may have already passed. So it'll be on Halloween, starting around 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So here's the Zoom meeting ID and password, just for people that want to be able to see it if they can't access the chat quickly. Okay, a second. All right, so we see Sue just says in the score editor, how do I overcome the lack of transpose functions like mirror and retrograde with MIDI functions? So I don't think mirror retrograde would be considered like a transpose function, but let's say if I wanted to come over, let's jump to. All right, so let's say I have this part here and I look at it in the score editor. So, raise that, that we could just kind of come in and say, okay, I wanted to take this particular part here and say, okay, I want to take this run. And, if we go to the MIDI functions, so if we look at this in our score editor, we could see like our different runs here, but let's say, okay, when we go to our key editor, we could just come right over here and say, okay, let's go to our MIDI functions. And then here we could just do a mirror. So if you wanted to mirror that, so if we want to see that, so if we mirror that particular function, that is automatically going to be presented in the score editor. So while the functionality may not be there in the score editor, the MIDI functionality is still there, and any change that you make in, so let's say any change that you make here, will be reflected in the score editor as well. All right, so we see from channel ripoffs is sorry for the confusion, sorry for my lack of understanding probably. It says you're doing everything perfect but I want more notes. Please put up 4 notes in each chord, then make them into one long chord. All right, so let me just jump back to where we were. All right, so all right, so we have 4 notes. Please put 4 notes in each chord, then make them into one long chord for each note. All right, so let's say we do this. I'll just okay, so let me just all right, so we do the legato here, so it could be that maybe these aren't assigned to different voicing, so let's see if we could. So let's see if we go to our functions, legato. So a couple of the voices, so let's say, all right, another way to approach this, I'm not sure if it's tied to the grid. If it's tied to the grid, we could come over here and just say, okay, I want whole notes. And when we go to edit to quantize, we could say quantize the MIDI event lengths. And now they will all be set to the same. But we may be able also to take each of these. So depending on, so let's say if this was soprano, if I selected these, let's see if we change these to soprano voice, see if that. And let's see if those 4 will, when we do legato, if they're assigned to the same voice. So I'll just do the top one since that was the one that was. Yeah. So, I mean, let me know if you could use the quantized length function for that, if that would work for what you're doing. All right, Yazi and Trappy Music says, in Cubase 14, is it possible to drag and drop a wave MP3 to the chord pads, like to the chord track? So no, but you can come over here. So let's say I want to take a project here. So okay, so now I'm going to add, it'll be a 2-step process because we could take it from the chord track to the chord pads. So I'm going to, let's add a chord track. Oh, maybe I already have one in here somewhere. All right, let me just try again. Okay, so I'm going to add a chord track. All right, so I drag and drop here. We now have the chords. Let's go to the chord pads, and then we could just say we want to just find the, we just click here, assign from the chord track. So now that we copied it to the chord track, you see this little icon here. And now all the chords from the project will be assigned directly to the chord track here. So just click on this icon. So you need to take it to the chord track and then the chord track to the chord pads. See, Flyv says, accidentally resubscribed to an instrument when I was wanting to cancel it. Bummer. And it says it's called Loop Cloud. All right, so we have Guitar God 66 Able. Speedy. Great to see Speedy. So, Speedy, I know he was living in Alexandria, not far from me. Great to see you on. Hope you're doing well, buddy. All right, Ben Tyreman's question says, will I still be able to use old versions of Cubase if I cross-graded to Nuendo? Yes. So if it was on version 11 and earlier, which was using the E license, or those versions, no, but since 12, 13, and 14, yes. All right, so we see Da Vinci Girl still at work. So wanting to wish everyone a happy Halloween. Great to see you on, Daniela. All right, Donkey Flip is saying hi from Greenwich, London. Matt Ellison saying hi to everyone. JVI is wishing everyone a happy Halloween. JVI says, hey Greg, hope you and your family are well. So we're doing great. Thanks for asking. All right, we see DJ Brad Aura just says, wow. All right. All right, so we see Cecilia School of Music says Cubase is complete to install, or make it simple, or make a video of 2025. So, you know, I'm not sure if it's if you're having problems with the install of Cubase, but again, once you have, you go to the download assistant here. You know, if you don't want to do each individual part separately, you know, like, so what you could do is just come over here, say, okay, we have Cubase Pro 14. You could just click on Install All, and that will do all the different components. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so Mark Brugler says, awesome, thanks for succinctly answering my questions. You're welcome. Thanks for joining and being part of the community today. So we see from Samir Kulkarni says, hi Greg, is there a way to create macros or key commands to see specific automation lanes in a surround panner, for example, front to back panner or signal width, etc.? All right, so let's take a look, see if we could do it. We might be able to do it in a logical editor. Okay, so let's come over, let's open up track. We just route it to fire like 714 out. Okay, so I'll just see if we could, so let's say if we come over here, all right, so let's say we're looking for like a particular, let's say LFE level. Okay. Not sure if this will work, but we'll give it a shot here. So. Okay, so let's see if we have that track selected. Yeah, I don't think that there's a way to do it. I mean, we could search for it, but I don't think that. Yeah, I'll play around with it some more over the weekend, but I don't think that there's a way, but we might be able to do like a search where you could type in the particular name and be able to select it that way. So, but I'll play around with it. And if you want to send me like just an email reminder to clubcubase@steinberg.de, be happy to check it out so I don't have a brain cramp over the weekend. All right, so we see Ted Springman says, "Hi Greg, can you review reamping basics? I'd like to record dry guitar phrases into Hallian and output them to external pedals via my UA interface." So if just like we were talking about kind of doing the, so let's say, doing the external effects. So let's say if we have like a guitar part in Hallian, let me open up. We'll add an instrument track. We'll do Hallian here. Okay, we'll do just kind of a single instrument. Here, like just. And just import a file from Media Bay here. All right, so let's say we have this. And we wanted to reamp that. So once we're here, we could just come over into Hallian. We have this going to our master output. We could send this to, We have 32 stereo outputs and a 5.1 output. So we could send this, let's say, to output 2. And then what we want to do is wherever you have the guitar pedals connected to your UA interface, right, and realize that the pedals may be at different impedances than your audio interface, so something to be aware of. But at that point, we could take it directly from the output. We could feed that. So, if we wanted to always have those available, go to your audio connections and let's configure it as an external effect. So you say, okay, let's add an external effect. It's going to be, my MXR pedal. We'll make it mono in, mono out. Okay, and at this point, we would say, okay, we have our howling in. We want this to go to, our guitar clean, and we could just go to our inserts, and we see external plugin. So we could just come over here and say, okay, let's get to your external effect. And now, so we're going to basically define the connection here for the input and output on the external effect. Say this is going out of output 3, it's going into my pedal, and then out of the pedal directly back into input 5 or input 3, whatever. So once you have that defined, then you could just open up that external effect routing, and we come over here and we just could right click and measure the latency of the signal path, and then that would get the signal out from your audio interface into the guitar pedal, out of the guitar pedal back into the audio interface. Just be aware that there could be impedance mismatches because most guitar pedals aren't doing line level by default. All right, so we see from Rouseba, hi, is it normal that when I'm in a VariAudio window and I hit the spacebar key, it only plays the bottom? Or do you have to use the enter key in order to play the whole arrangement above also? All right, so let's take a look. I don't think, so it could be that maybe the bottom zones is soloed. So let's come over here, let's take a look at this project. Okay, so let's say I have my vocals in VariAudio here. So it could be that if we have this solo on. So let me just come over here. We'll select this. We'll open up our VariAudio. So here I could have my VariAudio open. So if this is soloed and I hit the spacebar, then, because if the track isn't soloed, we could be soloed in the editor. But it seems like we can hear it in context with the rest of the track. So just make sure that right here in the VariAudio editor that's not soloed. So even if now everything is here and I hit enter, because this is the active window, and when I come here, so if I click here on the active window, so if this is the active window now, the solo. So this is the active window here. We can see this white outline. When I want to make this the active window, the solo will be engaged. So play around with that, but it's probably going to be that the sample editor is in solo mode and is the area of focus. Okay, so C channel ripoff has more better description of it. Okay, so let's come over. Let me just think I understand what he's wanting to do now. So all right, so let's say if I drag these down here, all right, so I think what's going on is he has chords kind of like this, and he wants to join them all together so that they're just. So let's see if I come here, if I just go to edit and see if we just do glue. So if they're all kind of, so let's say I have these notes here, all right, and as I come over here, here, let me just, so if we have like these chords here, so try just going to, so let's say we have like these chords and we want these all to be one note. Let me know if this would work for you. Go to edit to glue, and then that becomes one single event as opposed to notes that are kind of chopped up. Okay, so you see Jazz says wait to crossgrade from Cubase 14 to Nuendo 14 doesn't wipe the Cubase 12 through 14 license, and you can use 3 times Cubase license and 3 times Nuendo license. That sounds strange to me. So you may not, so your Cubase license is still viable and you could still upgrade that. I think it's going to be still 3 licenses. But if you've upgraded, you could still upgrade your Cubase. Like if the new Cubase version comes out several months before the new Cubase or Nuendo 15, comes out theoretically, you can just simply, upgrade those 2 versions concurrently, independently. All right, we have a question from Sue. Says going back to transposing notes, is there a way of setting up a shortcut for setting up vertical mirroring in the logical editor? So let me just come over here. Let me just put in. Okay, so let's say if we want to come over here, so let's pick kind of like a spot in the middle. So I think, let me see if I remember this. Let's go to our logical editor. So let's transform. We'll say type is equal to note. And we'll say, I think if we say, let's do our pitch and mirror. So let's say in this case, and you may have to kind of set up, I want it to be B flat 2 or A sharp 2, either one. Okay, so let's say if I have this set up, let me just come over here. All right. Okay, so if I have these notes set up here, let me know if this is kind of what you want to do. So I just said type is equal to note and pitch. We want to use mirror operation. So now I could just come over there and do that, and we could use like the center note as an anchor. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, Sue. All right, so we see, hi Greg, my Groove Agent 5 won't accept all MIDI inputs as a source in. I have to choose Groove Agent Kit 1, 2, or 3, or 4 for it to work. Is there a reason for this? So, if you are sending, if we have our Groove Agent here, so let's open up our instrument track. So we go to Groove Agent. As we do this, we're going to all right, so once I have this particular track selected here, so let's say, let me just load up a different, like a non-percussion kit. All right, so right now, if we wanted Groove Agent to transmit the MIDI data to the track, that is when we would send, that's when on the MIDI input port that we would use the Groove Agent kits. So like, if we wanted to capture the patterns, let's say we have this pattern playing back. So let's come over here. So when we use the pattern so right now I could play in my fills and record that. And we have this set to all MIDI inputs. But right now the internal pattern sequencer in Cubase, or in Groove Agent, is playing. So if I wanted to capture that internal sequencer, what I would do is just come right over here and say, okay, I want this coming from Groove Agent Kit 1. And now as I hit record, let me just solo this, sorry. So now it's going to be capturing So usually you only use the MIDI inputs if you're actually capturing, but you should be able to, if I have this set to all MIDI inputs, one is on a track, go to your MIDI, like a MIDI insert, and if you go to your MIDI monitor, you can see exactly to make sure that MIDI notes are going in as expected. So make sure your controller is set up and it's on the right MIDI channel, but you should be able to use all MIDI inputs. All right, so Yop asks, says, hi Greg, do you know the release date of Cubase 15? I may. So says, I made also track Cubase 14, come on over spooky night. All right, he's ready for Halloween, but I can't really tell when it's coming. All right, so we have Sue, says, it's my first time watching these, so helpful just watching you operate, priceless, thanks. So thanks for the kind words. Yeah, it's always interesting, I remember even occasionally I'll go and just kind of spend a day with Hans Zimmer so he could watch someone else's technique. And he's always like, I don't want to watch a hip hop guy run Cubase. So, because I'm so set in my ways of doing things that, we need to have kind of good kind of cross fertilization of, ideas. So it's always good to watch other people work in Cubase. I learned stuff watching other people use Cubase, and hopefully people could learn watching me. All right, so I'm going to go through some of the questions that were mailed in advance. All right, so we had a quick question, how to do stutter effects in Cubase. All right. So let's say we want to come over here. So there's a great plugin, if you're not familiar with it, called Loop Mash FX, which is great for kind of performance tasks. So I think in this project I have it set on like maybe the master fader. So we have Loop Mash FX. So this used to be part of an instrument. The instrument went away, but we kept kind of the performance aspects of it. So we have, if we're playing a particular project back, we could look at this project here. So we'll say, okay. So we could do all sorts of different drops. And we could do this based on kind of like half notes. So I want like a longer drop. But with this, we could also do different stutter effects. So if we want to do. And you notice that this is kind of made out like keyboard. We could trigger this all from MIDI. If I want to do like eighth notes, staccato, or 16th. And we could capture little sections. And you can just kind of drop these in or play them in real time with MIDI. So if you need to do those types of edits, the VariAudio's, the Loop Mash FX is going to be a great tool for that. All right, so a question: what to do when Groove Agent doesn't find all the sounds? Some are marked in red. Is there a refresh button? So generally, and I installed a kit here just to show this. We get this question periodically. So when we go, usually when we see that red symbol, it just indicates that there's no license for that particular instrument. So when, like, I don't have a license for bouncy instruments. So when I go to load a kit, it means that I downloaded a kit that I don't have a license for. So when I come over here, you may see these red circles. That means that you downloaded the kit and the license isn't activated. When you go to the Steinberg download assistant, you'll see an area that says you must have a license for this to work, as opposed to ones that show up under my products. So if you just download like a million kits and you don't have licenses for that, you'll see this little red line. If you've purchased a license for these particular kits, then you could go to the activation manager and make sure that they're activated there. But probably it's like, if you buy a house, you don't necessarily, and we think of the house as Groove Agent, you don't necessarily get all the nice furniture and TV and a recording studio with your house. You have to buy that extra. So think of that as like the content for Groove Agent. You get a lot of incredible content with it, but there's a lot of content that's sold separately. All right. Question mailed in says, "Hi Greg, I'll try to keep a long story short. I'm looking into setting up a system for shooting music videos. There is a bit these are a bit special. Each take need to have the same time codes, not discrete as is common with normal filmmaking. In order to achieve this, I need to solve 3 problems. 1, I need to be able to save a WAV file with SMPTE timecode embedded. Am I correct in assuming that when I export a file into Cubase Nuendo, the timecode is automatically embedded, or do I need to do something extra? What about exporting in Wavelab? So I don't think Wavelab or Cubase, it's rare that there is SMPTE timecode that's metadata in a file. If there is, files will often have a timestamp. And, it could really depend on what the master is of where the time file is coming from. So if you have, if the video is sending into a synchronizer, then that video would record and Cubase would synchronize to that. You may need, if you're doing digital audio, and I think we've discussed this before, you may need a word clock for the digital audio to synchronize as opposed to just MIDI synchronization. But so it could have a timestamp so that all the files can start at the same point, but it's pretty rare to actually have like SMPTE timecode embedded in a WAV file. All right. It says 2, I need to be able to play back the WAV file and the embedded timecode. I'm considering installing Cubase on a laptop and get a 4-channel audio interface, 2 for the audio, 1 for timecode. The audio will be sent to Bluetooth speaker and timecode to the camera. So, what I would do if if the timecode is being sent to the camera, you have to figure out what's master. And the old terminology was master and slave. It's so we'll say what is the master and what is the follower. I guess we'll use that terminology. So if you have Cubase as the master, one of the things that you could do is just simply come over to an audio track and choose to have the audio track with a SMPTE timecode. So we could just simply come right over here, and as an insert, you could have the SMPTE timecode generator found under Tools. So as we would play back, this would be the timecode, and then you could have the clock sync to this, and that would be a reliable way because the audio synchronization is going to be much higher resolution than the frame synchronization for the video. So, but some people will also capture the SMPTE timecode in as a WAV file to record it just to have it, but then that SMPTE timecode track would need to be fed into a synchronizer. Okay. And probably Bluetooth speakers will introduce latency on top of things, so it may not be so great in where you're doing synchronization tasks. It says, I need to send a timecode to the iPhone to be embedded in a video. Blackmagic Design has this just released product I think will accomplish this. Yeah, so if they have a way of embedding timecode into the video, so I'm not sure if it's just a burn in or if it's actually going to be kind of embedded in the video. So if you had more information on the Blackmagic box, you could do that. But generally assembling a lot of this stuff isn't that bad afterwards. All right. All right, next question. Hello, I've reinstalled an external VST plugin instrument. While playing the instrument, and the inspector shows now 3 exclamation marks. If I relink the VST instrument new, Cubase loses the sound in the settings for that instrument. So where can I see before I relink the VST instrument which program number, sound bank, etc. is saved in the track for VST instrument? It would be nice if Cubase not only saved the settings for a specific sound of an external VST instrument, sound bank name, program number, and also displayed this parameter. So generally, if it's a VST instrument, most VST instruments don't deal with program changes. They can. Most developers choose not to, and that's why you don't necessarily see it embedded. Once that instrument is set up and saved in the project, Cubase sends all that information to the plugin. And if the plugin isn't seeing its sounds, or if its sounds have changed internally for the content for that particular instrument, you may see like those 3 lines indicating that there's a missing sound. But that's all kind of within the plugin itself. So Cubase kind of, loads up the plugin in its state that was used in a project. But if that content isn't available in the plugin anymore, then Cubase doesn't really, can't make the plugin do that. So it's not going to be able to extract it because the plugin probably isn't doing program change and bank change message like hardware MIDI devices do. So check with your plugin company and see if there's a reason that perhaps the content isn't showing up, but that would generally be outside of Cubase. Okay, next question. Greg, I met you years ago, Bellevue American Music in Washington State. Yeah, I remember. I always loved doing clinics there with Reese. I was just in Washington yesterday. Says I'm having a bad time with Cubase RS14 trying to live monitor a vocal track with reverb effects without introducing confusing delay in the audio I hear back on my headphones while trying to sing record. I just watched this gent's videos and it did not help me, mainly because when he selects his sends in his EQ view, the vocal track always is the last section of the video. He sees things I do not see. Maybe it's assumed that there's prerequisites and this guy figures out. I'm using Cubase Artist 64-bit on Windows 11. I'm trying to hear the reverb and other effects real time while monitoring the track according to the vocal track. Simply selecting the monitor icon on the track only introduces confusing delay, and that is distracting me when I'm trying to sing. So when you're doing this, realize that when we are recording, latency is introduced by there are 2 main causes of latency. One will be the buffer size of your instrument, so of your audio interface rather. So we come over here, we see our control panel, we see, okay, I'm at 512 samples for my buffer, and I have a latency here 12 to 13 milliseconds. All right, so we go to add an audio track. All right, now if we are not set for direct monitoring, what happens, and we could set the direct monitoring right here. So direct monitoring will take the input directly to the output and bypass any effects. All right, now in Cubase, if we go to like your channel settings here or in the mixer, we could enable a section called the channel latency. Okay, so when I select this particular area here, and we could also see it right here in our setup sections, we'll just add our latency. So I'm going to add plugins. Now each plugin can have its own latency. So let's say I want to come over here and I want to have a compressor that I'm monitoring through. So we're not printing these effects. So let's say, okay, we go to Dynamics and we have our black valve compressor. All right. Now, as we do this, let's come over and let's add like a multi-band compressor. So, and as we add kind of dynamics, we can say, okay, let's get to our multi-band compressor, and we can see, oh, we have 113 milliseconds of latency. Let me add a reverb. Okay, now we add something like a reverence. Right, reverence sounds great, but we come over here, we can see that every time that we add plugins, that these plugins are adding latency. So one trick to do is you could just come over here, and when this track is kind of record enabled, we could bypass, the latent plugins. Now, sometimes when we do plugins, you may go, okay, I don't need to monitor, a really large reverb. Maybe I just wanted to do a simpler reverb because we're not mixing with this, but maybe try like something like a RoomWorks SE. So now when I come over here, we can see that the RoomWorks SE reverb doesn't have any latency, and we could actually, so depending on the plugins can be causing the latency. And that's why audio interfaces like the Steinberg UR interfaces has built-in reverb so that you could monitor with reverb without any perceived latency whatsoever. So again, just right click on your sections in your mixer or on your inspector, go to your setup sections, make sure you have the channel latency, and just, once you see this number appear, click here, and that will show you the exact latency of each plugin. So, and it could be plugins that are being used in other parts of the system. So, if you have like 6 plugins on your master bus for, like mastering plugins, those may have that, are doing read ahead, just simply turn those off. So it's that latency of the system, and the latency monitor can allow you to do that. So, maybe use simpler plugins that will give a reverb for tracking. Maybe you wouldn't use it for the mix down, but the tracking reverb can have a lower minimized latency. So give that a try. All right. And with that, we will go ahead. I'm going to paste the link for the Zoom meetup here real quick. All right, great to see Michael Pierce on. And I will start the Zoom social. And if you haven't done this Zoom social meetup, what you could do is just simply log in. It's a great way to meet people that are on the live streams. So again, the meeting ID, it will be 814-233-1002, and this will be live for like the next 2 hours. And the passcode 741785. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. All right, and we have people. All right, great to see Brian Sawyer, Tim Weinheimer, Nathan McFarland. All right, Jan, John Barry, Uno Memento, Sue. All right. All right, we have Jay. John. All right, we have Vince joining. I'll turn my camera on here real quick. All right, Nathan is saying howdy to everyone. Give it a couple minutes and I'll end the live stream so people get logged in. All right, with Soren joining. give it just another minute or so and get things wrapped up on the live stream.
Am I back?
Think so.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to end the live stream here real quick.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, and everyone, I'm going to just post, I'll share just the meeting invite one more time for people.
You alone are the most high over all.
Well, thank you, but I don't think so.
Everything breathing must sing. Oh, sing, created together.
Right. Nathan, I think we're hearing your vocal track come through. All right, so I'm going to end the live stream here.
This is my first time here. What